It all started with a letter she never expected to receive. A letter that would change the course of her life and reveal a secret she had kept buried for years. Catherine sat at her desk in the sleek office building, staring out over the city. The sunlight reflected off the skyscrapers, bathing the room in a golden glow. She had built this empire from nothing, one step at a time. Yet, her mind kept wandering back to a time when she was nothing more than a young woman, hopelessly in love and heartbreakingly abandoned. She had once believed in love, the kind that movies and novels promised. But that was before Isaac left her with nothing but an empty promise and a child. She read the letter once more, each word piercing her heart like it was the first time she'd seen them. The invitation to the gala where she would meet Isaac again, the man who had turned his back on her when she needed him most. It had been 18 years. 18 years since she had been left alone, pregnant with their child, unsure of the future. And now, 18 years later, she was invited back into his world, the very world he had abandoned her from. The letter was clear. He wanted to see her again. But why? The gala was a lavish affair, one of the grandest events in the city. Catherine had never imagined herself in such a setting. It was all so foreign to her now. She had once attended these kinds of events with Isaac, when their love was new and the future seemed bright. But tonight, she was different. She was no longer the naive girl he had left behind. She was a woman with power, with purpose, and a secret. She had built an empire, but it wasn't just the business world she had conquered. Her daughter, Emma, had grown into a rising star, a brilliant businesswoman in her own right. Isaac had no idea that his daughter was now one of the most sought-after names in the industry. The thought of Isaac seeing Emma, the daughter he never knew, filled her with a mix of emotions. Would he recognize her as his? Would he regret abandoning them both? The thought of seeing Isaac again made her stomach churn. He had been the love of her life, but his departure had shattered her. She had never expected to see him again, much less be invited back into his world. But now, as the night of the gala drew near, Catherine knew she couldn't refuse. This was her chance to show Isaac what he had missed. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about showing him that, despite everything, she had survived. She had thrived. She had built something that he could never take away. As the date of the event loomed closer, Catherine could feel the weight of the past lifting off her shoulders. She had everything now. She was ready to face him, ready to show him that her world had flourished without him. And when Isaac saw her again, he would understand just how much he had lost. The evening arrived faster than Catherine expected. As she stood in front of her full-length mirror, adjusting the hem of her sleek black dress, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The city lights twinkled through the window behind her, casting a warm glow on the room, but her reflection seemed distant, almost foreign. She had come so far since the days of her broken marriage. Yet, there she was, preparing to face the man who had left her behind, without a second thought, years ago. She could feel the tightness in her chest as memories rushed to the surface, the late-night talks, the promises made, and then the silence when Isaac walked away. A few years ago, she would have crumbled under the weight of this moment, but not anymore. Catherine had built herself up, brick by brick, just as she had built the life she now led. It was all thanks to her daughter, Emma, who had blossomed into a remarkable woman. She thought of Emma's first steps into the business world. How proud she had been to watch her daughter stand on stage at the conference, her poise and brilliance shining through. Emma had been her reason for everything. Now, as Catherine prepared for this confrontation, she knew she was not just going for herself, but for Emma too. The gala was held at the Grand Hilton Hotel, the kind of place Catherine had never imagined herself stepping into. Yet, tonight, she would walk through those doors with a sense of purpose that felt almost surreal. She had once been part of this world, the high society events, the perfect image. But it had all crumbled when Isaac walked out. Now, she was returning, not as the vulnerable wife he left behind, but as a powerful, self-made woman, a force in her own right. As Catherine entered the venue, she could see the sparkling chandeliers above and the lavish crowd mingling below. The room was filled with chatter and laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses echoing through the space. Isaac had been the center of this world once, but now, it was Catherine's turn to step into the spotlight. She walked through the crowd with grace, her head held high. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for him. And then, she saw him. Isaac, standing by the bar, chatting with a group of influential business partners. The man she had once loved. The man who had shattered her world. He was older now, his once dark hair touched with gray, but his presence was still commanding. He hadn't noticed her yet. Catherine took a deep breath and moved closer. As she walked past, she felt a mixture of emotions. She had never imagined this moment, never expected to see him again after all these years. Her steps felt steady, but inside, her heart raced. She had no intention of confronting him immediately, but the fact that they would be in the same room, facing each other, was enough. She had no idea how he would react. Would he recognize the woman she had become? Would he feel any remorse for the years lost? Or would he remain the same, cold and distant, as if nothing had ever happened? She tried to push the questions from her mind. Tonight wasn't about him. It was about her. It was about showing Isaac that she had built a life, a successful one, without him. She had loved him, but she didn't need him. Not anymore. Catherine took a final glance at Isaac before walking to the stage. She wasn't just going to attend this event. She was going to make a statement. As the spotlight shone down on her, she could feel the eyes of the room on her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the power of her own presence. Isaac might have left her behind, but here she was, standing tall, stronger than ever before. Catherine stood at the edge of the stage, her heart pounding as she scanned the room. She knew Isaac was somewhere among the crowd, probably watching her, but she couldn't bring herself to look directly at him just yet. The event had started, and the speeches were underway, but she wasn't listening to them. Her mind kept drifting back to the first time they had met, how he had captivated her with his ambition, his charm, and how, at one point, they had shared dreams of a future together. But those dreams had shattered the day he walked away. She had built her life from nothing, a testament to the strength she found in herself after the betrayal. It wasn't easy, but it was hers. She had learned to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders, and now, she stood here, a successful woman in her own right, poised to show Isaac just how far she had come. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the flicker of old emotions that stirred inside her when she thought about him. She had promised herself she wouldn't let him affect her, not anymore. Still, she could feel his presence in the room, like an invisible force pulling at her. The speeches continued, but Catherine's mind wasn't on them. She had to prepare herself. When the right moment came, she would have to face him, not as the woman who had been abandoned, but as the woman who had rebuilt herself. And, perhaps most importantly, she would have to face the daughter he never knew he had. Emma, the one person Isaac had no idea about. The one person who had taken the best parts of him and the best parts of her to become a rising star in the business world. Catherine smiled softly at the thought of Emma, her daughter's fierce determination and her sharp mind. Emma had no idea that her father, the man who had abandoned them both, was standing in the same room. For Catherine, that thought was both a relief and a challenge. She had promised Emma the truth when the time was right, but this was not something she had ever imagined would happen. She never expected Isaac to show up again, and now here she was, standing in front of an audience, about to meet the man who had broken her heart. The moment was almost here. She could feel it. She had the perfect speech prepared, but it wasn't the speech that would make the most impact. It was what she did next, what she had achieved. That was the real testament. As she stepped off the stage and made her way toward the back of the room, she caught a glimpse of him. Isaac. His eyes met hers, and for the briefest of moments, it felt as though time had stood still. His gaze was steady, but there was something unreadable in it. He didn't look like the man she remembered. He looked older, a little more worn, but there was still that unmistakable presence about him. She couldn't help but wonder if he recognized her. She certainly recognized him. She had spent years living with the scars he had left, and yet, here he was. He had walked away from her when she was pregnant with their child, and now he was standing in front of her. She didn't know how to feel about it, but she did know this. She wasn't the same woman she had been 18 years ago. She was strong, independent, and, most importantly, she had a daughter who had turned out better than she could have ever imagined. This was her moment. It was time for Isaac to understand the consequences of his actions, to see who he had left behind, and to realize just how much he had missed. She was no longer the girl who had silently endured the pain of his abandonment. She was Catherine, a woman who had taken back control of her life and built an empire that didn't need him. As Isaac approached her, Catherine stood tall, no longer hiding her pain. Tonight, she wasn't just confronting the past. She was embracing her future. Isaac approached Catherine slowly, his steps measured, but there was something different in his gaze now. The years that had passed between them felt like nothing, yet everything, all at once. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes searching hers, as if trying to find the woman he had once known. Catherine held her ground, her posture straight and unyielding. She had learned long ago not to shrink in the presence of those who had wronged her. She had built her life without him, and she had no intention of letting him take that from her. Catherine, Isaac said her name with a softness she hadn't heard in years. It almost sounded like an apology, but she didn't allow herself to believe it. Not yet. Isaac, she replied, her voice steady, controlled. He hesitated for a moment, his eyes flickering with something that resembled guilt, before he spoke again. You look different. She couldn't tell if it was admiration or surprise in his voice. I've changed, she said simply, offering him nothing more. His eyes seemed to soften, and for a moment, she wondered if he was about to say something meaningful. But then the crowd around them shifted, and Isaac's attention broke away, just for a second, enough to remind her that he wasn't fully hers to command anymore. She took a breath, focusing on the present, not the past. I didn't expect this, Isaac said, his voice low, as if the weight of the years was pressing down on him now. Catherine fought the urge to sigh. The truth was, she hadn't expected any of this either. But here they were. Neither did I, she answered, her gaze never wavering from his. The years of hurt, the abandonment, all of it seemed to be contained in the space between them. And yet, Catherine felt no bitterness. Not anymore. She had made peace with the past. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. It was about the life she had built, the daughter she had raised, the empire she had forged. Isaac had walked away from all of that, and now he was standing here, unsure of what to say, as if the years hadn't passed. I want to meet her, Isaac said, his voice barely above a whisper. Catherine knew exactly who he meant. Emma, her daughter, the girl Isaac had never known, the girl who had become everything to Catherine. Her pride, her purpose. Emma had become a business mogul in her own right. But Catherine knew the truth. The girl was a reflection of both of them, a mix of strength, resilience, and ambition. She wasn't ready for Isaac to meet her. Not yet. Not in this moment. You will, Catherine replied, her voice steady, but her heart racing. In time. Isaac nodded, but the longing in his eyes was clear. He had missed so much. Catherine didn't feel sorry for him. She couldn't. She had made her way through the world without him, and Emma had thrived in spite of his absence. But still, there was a part of her that wanted to show him how much had changed, how much had blossomed. She took a step back, her hand instinctively brushing the edge of her dress, as if reminding herself that this was her time, her moment. She wasn't going to let Isaac steal her spotlight again. Not now. Not ever. As she turned away, she felt his gaze on her, but she didn't look back. She was done looking back. The future was waiting. As Catherine made her way through the crowd, she could feel Isaac's eyes still on her. There was a tension in the air, a silent acknowledgement that things were far from over. The evening was in full swing, but for her, the world around her seemed to blur into the background. She was no longer part of the sea of faces and conversations. Her thoughts drifted to Emma, her daughter, who had spent the evening in a separate room, carefully shielded from Isaac's unexpected appearance. Catherine had promised Emma that she would be the one to control the timing of their introduction, but she hadn't expected the moment to feel so complicated. The weight of everything, the years, the betrayal, the missed opportunities, pressed down on her. But there was also something else, something she hadn't anticipated. A sense of power. The power of knowing that no matter what happened in this room, she had already won. She had survived and thrived without Isaac. She had built a life that was entirely hers. Catherine stepped outside for a moment to collect herself. The cool night air wrapped around her, offering some relief from the intensity of the event. She needed a moment of clarity. In the distance, the city skyline glittered, a silent witness to the years she had spent working tirelessly, building her empire. The empire that now made her the person she was today. But the empire also included Emma. Everything she had done, every sacrifice she had made, had been for Emma. It was her daughter who had driven her, pushed her to be better, to rise above the pain of the past. Catherine closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those sacrifices. She had raised Emma on her own, with little support, and had watched her grow into the confident, intelligent woman she had become. Emma was everything to her, the one bright light in an otherwise dark chapter of her life. And now, Isaac wanted to be a part of that life. The idea of him meeting Emma stirred something deep inside her. She had worked so hard to protect her daughter from the past, to ensure that Emma would never feel the same heartbreak Catherine had endured. And yet, now Isaac was standing there, wanting to be part of it all. Catherine didn't know if she was ready for that. She didn't know if she ever would be. But she couldn't ignore the reality anymore. Isaac was a part of their story, even if she wished otherwise. As she turned to head back inside, she caught a glimpse of Isaac across the room, talking with a group of guests. His posture was confident, commanding, as it had always been. But there was something different in his eyes now. He wasn't the same man who had left her so many years ago. She could see the regret in his expression, a flicker of realization that he had missed out on something important, something irreplaceable. Catherine didn't feel sorry for him. She wouldn't. But she also couldn't deny the impact of his presence. He had once been her everything. But now, he was just a man who had chosen to walk away from a family that had given him everything. And yet, despite the years, despite the hurt, here they were, facing each other again. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going to let the past define her future. The past was behind her, and the future was wide open. And it was time for Isaac to understand that. Catherine stood by the balcony, her eyes locked onto the distant horizon, the cool breeze brushing against her skin. The city sprawled before her, a testament to her journey, a journey she had walked alone for so many years. The gala continued inside, but she needed a moment to herself. The weight of the evening had begun to sink in, and the emotions she had buried for so long were beginning to surface. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had come this far, and she would not let her past define her now. Isaac's presence in the room was like a storm, unpredictable and overwhelming. His gaze had followed her throughout the night, and though she had remained strong, she could feel the tension between them. She wasn't sure what to make of it, this sudden rekindling of something that had long been extinguished. Her mind raced with thoughts of Emma. Her daughter, the one person who had kept her grounded, had given her purpose. Isaac had no idea how much Emma had grown, how much she had become. She had become a woman of her own, someone Isaac would never truly know. And yet, Catherine knew that Isaac had the right to meet her. But was it the right time? Would Emma even want to meet the man who had abandoned her? The thought unsettled her, and she felt a pang of guilt. But she had always promised Emma that she would protect her from the past, that she would shield her from the mistakes of the people who had failed them both. Catherine shook her head, dismissing the doubt. She had done what was right. She had given Emma everything, and Emma had turned out to be everything Catherine had hoped for and more. As she walked back into the ballroom, she felt a sense of resolve. Tonight wasn't about Isaac. It wasn't about him coming back into their lives after all these years. It was about showing him that they had moved on, that they had survived. The past was done, and the future was theirs to shape. Isaac was just a shadow from a time long gone. She could feel his presence before she even saw him. He was standing near the bar, talking to a group of businessmen, but his eyes were on her. Catherine's heart beat faster, not with the old feelings of love or longing, but with something much stronger, the power of self-assurance. She had built her own world, a world that didn't need him, a world that didn't rely on his approval or presence. She was stronger than she had ever been. As she made her way towards him, she saw the change in his eyes. They were no longer filled with the same arrogance or pride they once held. There was something else there now, remorse, perhaps, or regret. But Catherine wasn't sure she wanted to find out. She didn't need an apology, not from him. Not anymore. Catherine. Isaac's voice was softer this time, like a whisper lost in the noise of the room. I've been thinking about you, he said, his words hanging in the air between them. Catherine stopped in front of him, meeting his gaze without flinching. You've been thinking about me, she repeated, her voice calm. What about? Isaac shifted, clearly uncomfortable under her steady stare. About everything, he said quietly. I never meant for things to end the way they did. Catherine's lips tightened into a thin line. She had heard those words before, and they meant nothing now. It doesn't matter anymore, she said simply. turning away before he could say anything else. She wasn't going to stand here and listen to empty words. She had moved on. She had built a life without him, and she didn't need him to understand it. She had done it all on her own. As Catherine left Isaac standing there, she felt a sense of liberation. She didn't need his apology or his approval. She was exactly where she needed to be, and she was ready for whatever came next. The past had shaped her, but it no longer controlled her. Catherine stepped into the quiet room, the soft hum of the event still vibrating through the walls. She was alone, or so she thought, until she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, her heart rate quickening for a moment, but it was only Emma, her daughter, walking toward her with a smile on her face. Emma's presence always had a way of grounding her, of reminding her of everything she had fought for. She didn't need to look back at Isaac to know he wouldn't understand the kind of woman Emma had become. Emma was everything she had hoped for and more. "Mom," Emma said, her voice steady and full of confidence. "How are you holding up?" Catherine smiled softly, her gaze flickering briefly to the window, the city lights sparkling in the distance. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice held the weight of the evening. Emma studied her for a moment, as if sensing the deeper layers of her thoughts. "You know, he's not the same man you remember," Emma said. Catherine's eyes flickered to her daughter, a mix of surprise and admiration. Emma had always been perceptive, even as a child. She had a way of seeing things that others missed. "I'm not sure what I expected, Emma," Catherine replied softly. "But I know one thing. I don't need his validation. Not anymore." Emma nodded in understanding. "You've built something incredible, Mom. You don't need him to see it. We both know what you're capable of." Catherine's chest tightened with pride. She had given Emma a life free from the mistakes of the past, and Emma had become a shining star in her own right. Emma was strong, brilliant, and determined, everything Catherine had wanted her to be. "I know," Catherine said, her voice steady now. "But seeing him again, it brings everything back. The memories, the pain, the way he left without a second thought." Emma stepped closer, her hand gently resting on Catherine's arm. "You don't need him to be proud of you, Mom. You already know what you've done. You've already proven yourself." Catherine let out a soft breath, a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying lifting just a little. She had been so focused on the past, on the choices Isaac had made, that she had forgotten to focus on the incredible life she had built. She had given Emma the future she had dreamed of. That was enough. As she stood there with Emma, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. She had done it. She had rebuilt her life, her empire, and most importantly, she had given Emma a future filled with endless possibilities. "You're right," Catherine said, her voice filled with quiet strength. "I've already proven myself." Emma smiled, the kind of smile that lit up her entire face. "And you're only just getting started," she said, her voice full of pride. Catherine's heart swelled with love for her daughter. In that moment, she knew that everything she had been through, every moment of pain, every struggle, had been worth it. She had created a life that was full of power, love, and resilience. She had created a future that didn't need Isaac's approval or validation. She had built something of her own. And as the evening continued around them, Catherine felt a sense of peace settle in her chest. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Catherine stood in the quiet hallway, her thoughts racing as the voices from the ballroom drifted through the door behind her. The evening had been an emotional roller coaster, but she could feel the weight of the night beginning to settle into her bones. She had faced Isaac, she had faced the past, and now it was time for something new. She had already proved her strength to herself, to Emma, but tonight felt different. There was a sense of closure, a feeling that things had finally come full circle. She looked over at Emma, who had been with her every step of the way, her steady presence a reminder of everything that mattered. Emma's eyes met hers, filled with understanding, and Catherine smiled softly. "You okay?" Emma asked, her voice calm but filled with concern. Catherine nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." Emma raised an eyebrow, not fully convinced, but let the matter drop. Catherine could feel her daughter's eyes on her, and in that moment, she realized just how much she had been holding back. She hadn't fully allowed herself to feel the emotions that had been buried deep inside for so long. But now, standing here with Emma, she knew it was time. Isaac was part of their past, but Emma was her future. She had spent so many years building a life without him, and now, she was free. Free from the pain, free from the regret. But more than that, she was free to embrace the life she had created, the life she had fought for. She turned toward the door, taking a deep breath before walking back into the ballroom. Isaac was still there, standing among a group of business associates. His eyes found hers almost instantly, and for the first time that evening, there was no bitterness in her heart. There was no anger, no resentment. Just a calm certainty that she had done everything she needed to do. She had built something. She had built a future. And now, she was ready to step fully into that future, without looking back. As she moved past Isaac, their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, she saw the man he once was. He was still the same in some ways, powerful, driven, but there was something different in his eyes. A hint of regret. Catherine didn't let it affect her. She had moved past him long ago. She had built her own empire. She had built her own family. She had built everything she needed. The past was just that, the past. She walked up to Emma, who was waiting near the entrance. Emma smiled at her, and in that moment, Catherine knew that everything she had done, every decision she had made, had been for this. For Emma. For the future. As they left the ballroom together, the night air felt fresh and cool against their skin. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of all the possibilities that lay ahead. Catherine didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure. It was hers. It always had been. As Catherine and Emma stepped into the quiet night, the cool breeze brushed through their hair, offering a sense of calm that had been elusive for so long. The city lights shimmered in the distance, a glowing reminder of everything they had achieved. The event, the confrontation with Isaac, it all felt like a distant memory now. Catherine felt lighter, not because of anything Isaac had said or done, but because she had finally allowed herself to let go of the past. The weight of it had lifted, leaving room for something new, something beautiful. She glanced over at Emma, whose smile lit up the dim light of the street. Emma had been her rock, her reason for everything. As they walked, the quiet between them was comfortable, filled with a shared understanding. Emma was the future, and Catherine was ready to face whatever it held. She had done everything she could to protect Emma from the pain she had experienced, but Emma was more than capable of handling the world. In fact, Emma was already taking it by storm. Her ambition, her drive, her sharp mind. Catherine had given her the foundation, and Emma had built upon it with grace. They both knew it. Catherine couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Emma was her legacy, the embodiment of everything Catherine had fought for. As they walked side by side, Catherine allowed herself a moment of peace. She had done what she set out to do. She had built a life that didn't need validation from anyone, least of all Isaac. Isaac's presence earlier in the evening had stirred something within her, something she hadn't expected. But now, as they stood on the edge of a new chapter, she knew she didn't need to dwell on what had been. Isaac was part of their story, but he no longer controlled the narrative. She did. Emma did. Together, they had created a future filled with endless possibilities. And as they reached the car, Catherine opened the door for Emma, the weight of the evening now gone, replaced with the excitement of what was to come. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, as there always were. But with Emma by her side, she knew they could conquer anything. As the car doors closed and the engine roared to life, Catherine settled into her seat, her gaze lingering on Emma, who sat beside her, looking out the window with a quiet smile. The world was theirs, and Catherine had never felt more ready to face it than she did in that moment. The past was behind them, and the future was wide open. It was time to step into it, together.